One of the things that I'm known for is being a contrarian and a contrarian investor. And contrarians tend to look at things in different ways. So effectively what I do in my work is I buy stocks, but I buy stocks that are hopefully way down in value and the companies that have had a lot of difficulties. It's not normal for most people to become contrarians because psychologically I think it's difficult, because when the vast majority of people, the herd as we often say in the business, are thinking one thing, you're tending to think another and do other things. And quite possibly, it certainly happens to me often enough, you get it wrong. So when you get it right and you go against the herd, you're a very smart person. Of course, when you get it wrong and go against the herd, you are at the other end of the spectrum, so to speak. So in life too, I think in a lot of ways I was a contrarian. I went and got an undergraduate degree and then took 3 years off and worked and traveled and then went back and got my master's in business. And I think it's very important that people recognize, that students recognize at certain points in life you have certain choices that are not available later on. For example, at this point in my life, being a family man and a father and having 2 boys who are 9 and 6 years old, it's much more difficult for me to take off and travel in the way that I used to do. In the past, I went and worked in places like Czechoslovakia, what was Czechoslovakia, Nepal, led bike tours in France, worked in the Middle East, traveled around and had a lot of different experiences. You know, when you're in your 20s, or even earlier, it's a lot easier to do that. I can't just take off now for 6 months or a year and leave everything behind. So I think it's very important that people take into account, that students take into account that you've got a certain time in which to do certain things. Now, a lot of people say that you can do anything at any time. I personally think mostly that's hogwash. It's a lot easier to do certain things when you're young. You have a better ability to be irresponsible. I don't mean that irresponsible in a negative way, but in a positive way, and do other things. It's worthwhile taking advantage. When I was speaking at one university, at Western actually a while ago, the person behind it said that a lot of the students in business today, they're too focused on money and making it. Well, I think money's important. What I do, the emphasis, of course, is on money, and I think money has a place. I think, contrary to the expression, I do believe that money to a degree can actually buy happiness, as awful as it is to say. You can go out and see a concert, you can go and travel, you can eat meals in certain restaurants. But money itself is not the be-all and end-all, and one has to watch that the whole focus does not become money. There's a lot of things you can do without it, and especially when you're younger, I think it's important not to focus on it as much and do other things. Again, go traveling, stay in hostels perhaps. I did a lot of hitchhiking around. There's a lot of things that you can do earlier on that you can't do later. So I think one has to make sure that they understand that money does have a purpose. You need to put a roof over your head and food on the table, but it shouldn't become all-important, all-consuming. One of the things that I do that's different is I work in the business world, but back in 1991, it seems like a long time ago now, I got involved in theatre and started a theatre festival called SummerWorks, which still goes on in Toronto. It's one of the largest theatre festivals in Canada. And myself and my business partner, Benj Gallander, we give an award to the best new play called the Contra Award. I also wrote a number of plays, and a lot of people say that the world of theatre or the world of culture or the world of business don't work together, but they can. I do find often too many people in business, they poo-paw culture, and too many people in the cultural worlds, they're against business to a degree. But I think one of the greatest things you can do is try and expand yourself to look to other worlds so there can be some sort of cross-pollination between the two. I sometimes look at it as activating both the left hemispheres and the right hemispheres of the brain and allowing them effectively to cross-pollinate. And often what it does is it gives you different ideas from both worlds. For example, when I wrote some of my plays, I could take characters from the business world. And even in the business world, it allows me to think more about who is involved and how they might be thinking, and motivations, where they might be going. So I think it's very important to be looking at other worlds. One of the books I wrote is the Contrarian Investor's 13, which is all about different ways of investing. And it talks about 13 different rules. The investment letter that we do, just for the record, is the Contra the Heard investment letter. And for me, in a lot of ways, part of the fun of writing them is having humor in them and creating, and not just focusing on the business element. With the plays that I write, the last one that was on last March, I get to go off in a completely different direction. And again, a lot of people don't think that this cross-pollinization really works, but it can work. And as a student, I suggest you try different things, new things that might not normally be front and center. And I'll just give one more example. 3 years ago, partially to encourage my oldest son, Caleb, who was 6 at the time, I took up piano. And I thought it would encourage him, because he's a little bit competitive at times and he'd want to be better than Dad, which unfortunately for me at this point he is in some ways, although I'm actually quite pleased that he is. Part of the goal too was the more things that you do, the better it is for the brain, the different things that you do. So what I want to do is try and keep my brain active for as long as possible. And by taking up piano and music, I think it allows my brain to keep on firing in different directions. So by doing different things in your life, things that might not be front and center, by traveling, by experiencing new things, I think you will have a much more fulfilling life, learn more about other people, and effectively enjoy your life longer.